Thanks for tuning in to the Women's Vibrancy Code, a podcast dedicated to helping women move from exhausted to energized, balance their hormones, and feeling turned on by their life, their lover, and themselves. I'm your host, Maraya Brown. I'm a Yale and functional medicine trained women's health expert, midwife, mom, keynote speaker, and self-made entrepreneur. I'm the founder of my signature program, the Women's Vibrancy Code. So sit back, relax, and let's chat about your energy, hormones, libido, and embracing your feminine power. Oh, and you might want to have pen and paper to take some notes on some of these episodes. So, for all the podcast listeners, welcome back to the Women's Vibrancy Code podcast. Maraya Brown here with Nikki Nash. Nikki and I have had a number of conversations, and it was like we wanted to get into just getting to know one another. I was like, no, stop. We got to just push record because whatever we're going to talk about is going to be juicy and important, and let's just record it. And so for those of you watching live, please comment down below. Let us know where you're watching from. What do you resonate with as you're listening? What questions do you have for either me or for Nikki? And what I realized, what we were talking about is really the juicy right now is what does it look like to realize that in life and in business and in relationships, they will take from us what we are willing to give. And so ladies, start setting some boundaries. And who better than to bring this topic up and talk us through this than Miss Nikki Nash. Nikki, hi.
Hi, Maraya. I'm so excited to be here with your community.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm excited to have you. And so let me just read Nikki's bio and then we're going to get into it. And who knows where this conversation is going to go, but it's always amazing. So Nikki Nash is a Jersey girl at heart, even though she's got the Nash hat. I was like, not from the Natty, not from Nashville. But she's lived in various parts of the US, including Portland, Oregon, Boston, Massachusetts, New York City, Philly, and Washington, D.C. Now she's a proud resident of St. Petersburg, Florida, where you can often find her outside exploring nearby bodies of water, hopefully without the gators, during hikes and walks. And if you're a fan of superheroes, sci-fi, or British murder mysteries, you'll find a kindred spirit in Nikki. When she's not catching the latest Marvel flick, Nikki enjoys spending quality time with family and friends, playing cards, jetting off to different corners of the world. Nikki's on a mission to help women build world-changing businesses and create generational wealth. We will be talking about legacy in the midst of this conversation and impact. And as the co-founder and CEO of a boutique coaching firm, she's an experienced marketer, investor, and the best-selling author of The Market Your Genius, which was published by Hay House. Yeah, girl. Nikki has over 15 years of experience in marketing and branding, working with Fortune 100 companies and tech startups, and is an expert in helping people communicate their value to potential clients, land more dream clients, and build a profitable business that creates generational wealth. Her passion lies in teaching business, well-being, and wealth principles that empower individuals to create a life and business that they're absolutely in love with. You can hear Nikki share many of these principles on her podcast, Market Your Genius, and obviously listen on all your favorite podcasting platforms. And if you're here listening to the podcast, you're already here in whatever platform you're listening. And she also works some with Megan Huber. I'll make sure for the podcast show notes, we link in that podcast episode where I interviewed Megan. That episode got a lot of traction. There was a lot of really positive feedback there. So I'll make sure that that's in the show notes. And so hint to the podcast editing agency. Can you guys please make sure the link is in there? All right, Nikki, let's go. Anything you want to add to where I've already started, or just say hello?
Hello. And what's funny is I have yet to see a gator living in Florida. So I don't know if it's where I live in Florida. It's not so much swampy here. I did see 2 dolphins on my walk this morning.
Yeah.
So there's that. I'm way more likely to see a dolphin than a gator, but I'm sure I will see one soon intentionally. Like I want to find one.
Good. I'm glad. And I imagine they're probably not even that aggressive. It's just it's like, being in Australia, I'm afraid of snakes.
No, I get it. And I don't want to be that close to a gator because as much as, you know, they're like, oh, probability that something will happen to me is small, but then you see or news stories or something about, a gator eating a woman. And I'm like, well, okay, got it. Let's
No.
let's not get too close.
Right.
Maybe from a distance.
I'm going to go build my legacy. Okay, so one of the things that you said off camera, which felt really strong, was pretty much what I heard was I can give my business 8 to 10 hours a day, and it will take 8 to 10 hours a day. Or I can give my business 8 to 10 hours a week, and it will take 8 to 10 hours a week, while likely still having the same impact and the same growth. And wowza, talking about quality of life and relationship nurturing and being more present in those hours that you're dedicating to whatever it is that you choose to dedicate towards. Talk me through that a little bit.
Yeah. There was this study, and I have to find it because I can't quote it directly, but they looked at how many hours people spent working. Typically, this is like in corporations, right? So I think the average was around 9 hours a day of work that they're at work. And which means some people work less, some people work more, right? In terms of hours. And I definitely remember back in the day when I was in corporate, I would go to work and then I'd come home, chill, do things, and probably log back on later at night to kind of get ahead because my days were filled with so many meetings and all of that jazz. And then they looked at how many hours were actually productive, where people were actually moving the needle forward. And it was about 3 on average. So it's like, I could spend 10 hours or 9 hours a day working on my business, but the reality is probably 3 of those hours are productive. Or I could spend time getting myself, in the right mindset, really focused, really kind of in the inquiry of what are the things that will actually move my business forward that I have to get done, and spend 3 hours a day or 2 hours a
Mhm,
day and
mhm.
probably be more productive and get more done than if I am giving my business 10 hours a day. And so when I first started working, I really had this mindset, and it's not uncommon. Many people have it, that you've got to work hard. And the more that you work, therefore, the more you will create. And that's not true, right? Because you could be doing all the wrong things, or things that right and wrong is really easy to tell when you're looking in the rear view mirror, but of business anyway. Or you could spend a lot of time doing things, but it's not necessarily moving the needle.
I mean, I'm even thinking just in my home, I could probably waste a lot of time moving piles
Yeah,
and straightening up versus actually doing a deep clean and purging and getting rid of all the crap so they don't have to move piles anymore.
100%. 100%.
And in relationships, I'm sure that there are plenty of hours that I've spent with my husband where maybe our bodies are near one another, but we're not necessarily deeply connected. Whereas we can go on a date and spend an hour to do hour to two, 1 to 2 hours of time, and it's saturated and
Yes.
it's intentional. And I end up feeling so much more in love and so much more loved. I mean, I think we can apply this health, exercise.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, how do you apply it?
Yeah. So it has taken me a bit of time to kind of figure out what works for me. So I'll give some examples.
Yeah.
Um, and the first thing I will say, though, is what works for me may not work the same exact way for everyone else. So you kind of have to look at what makes sense. But before I share exactly what works for me, I want to share how I got there. And so I have a mentor who is a business owner, like an entrepreneur, an investor. He's created generational wealth probably a million times over. So like he does not have to work, but he does what he enjoys, and he spends time with his family, and then he mentors other folks. And so I'm really grateful that he's been um, someone that I've gotten to know, and who has provided me with a lot of perspective shifts. And so he has this analogy of dimes and dollars. And so dimes would be, and again, I'm just paraphrasing his way of speaking. So this isn't exactly what he would say, but dimes, when you think about it, are the activities that you're doing that create kind of the money that you need to live your lifestyle. And the dollars are the things that you're doing to actually create generational wealth. And so if you have all of your time built up in dimes, and we're focusing on dimes, you won't have time for your dollars. And so this is what started changing my perspective, because he's like, he's like, the most I want you to spend a week on your dimes is 20 hours a week. The most. He's like, ideally, you would get it down to 5 or 10 or something less than that. But I think he doesn't have to do dimes activities anymore, but he says he does them so that he stays in touch with reality, which I greatly appreciate, so that he can actually advise me on building a business. But the dollars would be things like doing big real estate investing deals so that it's cash flowing money that you don't have to put in active hours are for and appreciating. Or it could be being an angel investor in a business. It would be deals that very likely take more strategy and connections, and it might take a little bit longer to do depending on how much money and connections and all of that you have. But when you do it, it'll likely be a deal significantly bigger than all the dimes activities. But if you're not doing dimes, you can't live,
Well,
essentially.
and also the feeling that I have in my body when I listen to you is it's a whole lot less stressful. Like
Yes.
when I tap into the energy of focusing on the dimes, the energy expenditure, what's the P&L look like? What do we owe? What's coming in? How do we attract the next client? What does it look like for marketing strategy? It's like, ugh, I feel queasy in my stomach. I feel heaviness on my shoulders versus the idea of finding that next real estate investment that's going to cash flow. Like that feels exciting.
Yes. And ideally, you would have dollars that are cash flowing what your dimes would cover, right? So I'll give an example. I have, Megan Huber and I have a coaching business together, and we're both very clear that our coaching business will not create generational wealth for us. There's a very small percentage of people where it probably would, like Tony Robbins probably creating generational wealth with his coaching
Hmm.
business, right?
Hmm.
He also obviously does other investments, but like he probably could like create a legacy of wealth just from his coaching business. Us, like, probably not. And I have no problem with that. It's just the probability isn't super high. So instead of spending all of this time and effort to get our coaching business to $10 million or $20 million or $40 million in revenue, not even, it's not like we're taking that home, but in revenue, or we could build together $1 million business or a $3 million business and take home a smaller percent, a smaller chunk of money than we would if we had a $40 million business potentially. But use the money we bring in to pay our lifestyle and then invest in other opportunities that will create generational wealth for us. Right. And so that perspective shift had me go, why am I working so hard to build something that requires so much of my time, energy, and effort when I could be creating something in such a way that it could eventually run without me or mostly without me, and also generate enough money to pay for my lifestyle and afford me the opportunity to invest in other things.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking it's also about investing time
Mm-hmm.
in nurturing relationships. For me, I have three young children.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm pretty darn good at setting boundaries before 10 and after 3. I don't work.
Yeah.
And that's because that's my time with my children. And maybe it's not creating generational wealth from a money perspective, but it is because it's maintaining for me time and energy and relationship with my children when I know that 98% of the time I'm going to spend with them is until they're 18 years old. And that goes by in a snap of a finger.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes I feel a sense of guilt where it's like, well, gosh, I could just not go watch that hockey practice or not go watch that soccer practice and instead spend the time on generational wealth, which 10, 20 years from now, I might be more proud of. I don't know. Wouldn't it be great if we could just fast forward the clock and like look back and go, those were the decisions. They were the decisions that made the most impact in a positive way on my children. And those were the decisions that built the most legacy. Like, wouldn't that be fun?
Yes, but to that point, one, generational wealth is more than just actual money. It's the
Hmm.
knowledge you pass down, it's the love and support you pass down. There's so much more to it than just money. But
Yeah.
even if you're working 5 hours a day, if all 5 hours a day are have to be filled with your business, you can't create the money piece. But if you do, maybe it's maybe it's not broken out by day, but maybe it's 2 days are focused on generational wealth and 3 days are focused on your business at first, and then that
Yeah.
calibrates. Then
Yeah.
at least you have time to actually build the relationships in something like a real estate deal, or get the education or the specialized knowledge that you need to be able to do it, right? Because it's
Yeah.
not like I can just wake up tomorrow before I knew anything about real estate investing. It wasn't like I could just wake up and be like, I'm going to be a real estate investor and I'm going to go do a deal and have it turn out well, because I wouldn't have known what the heck I was doing. I had to
Hmm.
learn certain things. So that being said, what's worked for me is I color code my calendar, but I color code it. There are only 3 colors. And it's one color is personal, like just my personal time. And then the other 2 colors are one's for dimes and one's for dollars. So I can
Hmm.
look at my calendar and see where am I over indexing. And let's be real, at the beginning, a lot of times it's like you need to focus on the dimes, because if you can't fund your lifestyle, it like no, you're gonna be stressed out trying to focus on things that are gonna take longer and have a big return, but probably a delayed, like a longer ROI cycle. So
Hmm.
for me, it goes, okay, let me get to a point where my monthly recurring revenue covers, I know how long it's going to last, and I know what my that I'm hitting a baseline of self-pay that covers my lifestyle and maybe a little bit more, because who likes to only have just enough, right?
Yeah.
So that helps me go, all right, my goal right now, or has been for a while, is constantly just looking at how can I make the amount of time that I'm bringing in that money shorter? Where can I optimize? Where can I kind of shrink the time that I allocate to it so that I can focus on other things?
Yep.
And as you know, so for those of you who don't know me at all, I turned 40 June 22nd of this year, 2024. And I don't have kids yet, and I don't have a partner yet either, but I'm very clear that I want to get married and that I want to have kids. And so because of that, I'm also clear that I'm probably going to have like a 10 to 3 schedule at some point as well too, right? And so if I can get my dimes hours significantly down, but know that, hey, what I need to make is covered,
Yep.
and then I have a pathway, or I know what I'm doing with my dollars, then it's like I can do both and have a family. It just requires to how you're positioning your time,
Yep.
and whatever you allocate to something is how long it's going to take, right? I think about writing a book. Like when I wrote my book, people are like, oh, how long did it take? I'm like, I wrote the thing in 90-day period, but I only spent 13 days writing. I think it was 12. It might have been 12 days writing. I wrote every Sunday, I wrote a chapter, and that was it. And so
Yeah.
it's like in a whole day, I wrote a chapter. And it's like, wow, you can, but that's what I gave. That's what I dedicated to it. And I was able to do it. But if I told myself, I'm going to take a year or 2 or 3 to write this book, it would have taken me a year or 2 or 3 to write the book.
Totally. Totally, 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 totally. Um, do you think part when I keep thinking back that analogy you gave of a 9 hour work week with 3 hours of productivity? How much of that do you think is wasted energy in transitions? Like, what is it? I think what I read or what I was taught, if I remember correctly, anytime we transition thought forms or activities, it can take as much as 20 minutes to refocus. So
Yeah, I think it's
literally,
half
we're
an hour.
like just wasting our time all day long with our brains trying to refocus. Is that, am I right there?
Yes, you're right. And I think the latest that I heard was that it's could still be 20 minutes, and I rounded up in my head, but I told myself it was 30.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason why I batch stuff. So today
Yep.
is actually podcasting day. So the only meetings I have today are podcast interviews. That's it.
Hmm.
Because if I have to keep transitioning in and out of things, it's like nothing's efficient and everything takes
Yeah.
longer. So
Right.
I block and batch things on my calendar. And then I
Mm-hmm.
also, um, I don't try, I think because we have so many things that we believe we have to do and we
Mm-hmm.
try to fit it all in our calendar, we're wasting time with transitions, and we're also wasting time on stuff that does not matter. And so to give another analogy, like this also came from my mentor, and it was, I think a lot of this is also fresh because while I've heard it multiple times, I just spent a week with him and I think 12 other people at a retreat. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you hear something for the millionth time and then it lands
Yeah.
differently.
Especially when
And
it's in person, because then you have the emotional impact of it too. That's just
100%.
so much more juicy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, but he gave this analogy, and I actually can't remember if this analogy was for the point I'm about to make, but I mean, but it works nonetheless. So if you picture a bowl of water
Hmm.
and you tap the bowl of water, you'll get like little ripples because you did like a little action and you get little reactions, right? Now, if I slam my hand in the bottle or in the bowl of water, it's going to create like this big splash. And he said water never over or underreacts, right? Like if you tap the water, it's not going to suddenly like hit you in the face with a bunch of
Right.
water if it's in a bowl. Like that's just crazy. Like
Yeah.
some other
Or
factor has
like just decide, oh, I don't like that person's tap. I'm going to be more ferocious with my response.
exactly. People over and underreact. Water does not over and underreact, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he said the same is true for business. So if you take little actions, you're going to get little reactions, right? Mini
Hmm.
reactions. And if you take big actions, you'll get big reactions. Now, it doesn't mean that if you only do big reactions or big actions, that suddenly everything's going to be blown up and magical. But he suggests that we once a week we come up with one bold, big kind of action, right? And I'll give a
Hmm.
random example. This isn't something I've done, but let's say I wanted to move something forward. And so I write a letter to whomever the president of the United States is at the time, right? Now, I may not ever get a response, but the reality is if I do big actions like that every week and I do, let's say, 52 in a year or 50 in a year, chances are three, four of them may actually yield something.
Yeah.
And so those things, if they're big enough, will have a big reaction in your business and will probably move you further than all the little actions, right? And
Hmm.
so one of the things that I've gotten really big on is looking at my time in terms of do have I carved out dedicated time to do one big action each week? And what I'm about to say next, I actually got from a friend. We're also accountability buddies. And he said this, we meet a little more than once a month. And this morning he said he now does his to-do list with on one side of the paper are his little actions, like the things that create little ripples. And on the
Yeah.
right side are his to-do list of big ripples, big reactions. And he said that he just started paying attention to his default. And he said he could spend weeks just doing little ripple things and never get to a big ripple. But because he split his list that way and he now has to look at them, he literally goes, all right, this week, what's the big, I have to do at least one big ripple, one big
Hmm.
action each week. And the little actions are going to move things forward totally, but the big ones are going to expedite everything. And so
Yeah.
if you think about like similarly to dimes and dollars, you have to do the dimes, right? Because you need to fund your life. You have to do the little actions because that actually moves your business forward. If you don't need money to come in or anything like that, sure, just focus on big actions once a week and see what happens. But if you do have a business or something, and this actually works in probably any area of life, but if you do want things to move forward, it's like, all right, just do the little things, but carve out 2 hours a week or something to do a big action and not just think about what that action is, but to
Yeah.
choose it and complete it in the 2 or 3 or 4 hours that you dedicate to it.
So good. I'm looking at my whiteboard up here.
Yeah.
I think I have like my big actions up top and my little actions down below. And I've got one, two, three, four, five. Well, I'm not going to get overwhelmed by it. It's amazing how much we can get, how much productivity can happen when it's focused productivity. So as I'm listening to, I'm thinking through two things. Number one, I'm going, oh my God, my schedule today. I like dug myself in a hole. I just like literally right before hopping on this call, my husband, who's been playing CFO for the past few years, he and I met for the last hour looking through like numbers, travel schedule, all the things that I've been invited to, and trying to sift through decision making over the next 6 months of, okay, which things do I want to say yes to? And I had my human design read 3 years ago, and I'm a projector, for those of you that know human design. And so I've been really honing in on waiting for the invitation. And now there's so many invitations. I'm like, oh, this is awesome, but I've got to make the decision, and it all requires travel. Okay, do I want to merge and create that course? Do I want to do that mastermind in Vegas in September and the one in Scottsdale in September, and then I've got this other one, and all of the decision making. And then, oh, by the way, my nephew is graduating from college, and my um husband's grandmother is turning 100, so we need to fly all the way to Florida for 2 days with the entire family, which means, okay, do we pull the kids from school for a week? And so like I was in that right before hopping on this call. And then I'll interview you for the podcast. And then I hop off and I have a client call next. And I'm going to be switching gears into being like women's health expert and helping a client. And then I've got a break to focus on some of my own CEO stuff. I've got to hire someone and touch base on a project that's being finished. And oh yeah, I need to write the copy for that new event that I'm doing to get it to the website developer. And then I have my hormone consults this afternoon for my own hormones. And I'm like, what in the heck? Like, how is today going to end up feeling productive when I will likely end the day feeling a bit like a ping pong ball, not to mention the emotional roller coaster of coming right off of money management decisions and time management decisions and getting into the nitty gritty with my husband in a really loving way. But do we want to actually pull the trigger and decide to homeschool the kids next fall and take them with us? Okay, now we're making decisions for all this travel that involve the whole family. So i'm I'm condensing this down. Outside of batching schedule in a day and in a week, I'm curious what advice you give to CEOs in how they also sift through the onslaught of decisions. Like, I don't know about you, but I feel like all day long, there are decisions to be made. There are decisions to be made as a business owner, as an employer, as a coach, as a mother, as a wife, as a friend. And to be able to compartmentalize, I love the potency of when the decision is made. Because when I finally make the decision, it means no to all the other possibilities, and that emotional labor gets taken off. Like just saying it out loud feels like this sigh of relief. But I'm curious, how do you navigate all of the possibilities and decisions to say yes to with your time, your money, your energy, your love?
Yeah, I think the first thing that's always helpful with decision making is clarity on where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I am very focused on where I'm going, and you can choose the time period, I have in the past done things annually, I've done it quarterly, I've done it monthly. Right now, I'm on a 3 week cycle. Like I do things in 3 week cycles. And so I'll say, okay, for the next 3 weeks, what is my priority? What is my focus? And I make every decision through the lens of, is it in alignment or out of alignment with what I'm focused on right now?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the first piece that I have, business owners, CEOs, people like head of households, doesn't matter. Like you have to be clear on where you're going, be clear on the vision, and then make decisions through that lens. Is this moving my goal forward? Is it moving it? Is it not moving it at all? That weeds out first. Is it a big ripple or a little ripple, right?
Right.
You can start prioritizing things that way. So that's number one. The second piece is really understanding what decisions you actually have to make. I think so often we take on making all of the decisions, and there's decisions that as a business owner, you absolutely should and have to make. But there's also decisions that you can, one, empower your team to take. I mean, granted, that will require training, especially if you want them to make a decision that you'd be happy with. You can have them maybe make the decision, but before they pull the trigger on the action, they sync with you and align with you. And then you're just approving or not a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And the team can extend beyond your literal team. So, for example, when I meet up with friends, I'm like, here's when I'm available. They know I'm a vegetarian and have been since I'm 9 if we're going out to eat. And I'm like, just tell me when and where I have to be somewhere.
Yeah.
I I don't like the other day I had a friend who was like, hey, where do you want to eat and what time? And I literally was like, I do not care. And I think they were trying to be kind, like, no, really, what are you? I'm like, choose because I don't want to. I'm like, I do not want to
Yeah.
make a decision in that area of my life right now. So they were like, all right, I'm between these two restaurants. It's like, okay, I can make a decision between those two. I'm going to choose this one.
Oh my God, totally. I'm the same way in my marriage right now. My husband owns the calendar. And so just tell me where I need to be and how I need to be dressed and if I'm driving or you're driving. And I don't want to make any of the decisions. And what I'm realizing is it's not just who's making the decision, but also when does the decision actually have to be made? I feel like often we are bombarded as consumers or business owners, whatever it may be, in all of the bright, shiny objects and the possibilities. And often there is a perceived sense of urgency, but it's like, okay, do I really have to make that decision right now? For instance, Mindshare Summit in Scottsdale, Arizona, end of September would be awesome to go. I intend to go. If I make the decision today, there's a $500 off coupon.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I want to allow that sense of urgency to invade my day, so to speak, to save $500? Or do I allow myself to go, actually, that decision does not have to be made today? Yes, I'm the one that will make it, but it impacts my entire family. And if we are, in fact, going to travel for the entire fall and take the kids along, and it is okay if I put a pause and make the decision in August, they're probably not going to tell me no. And maybe I lose out on $500, but for the sake of my well being and my boundary setting, how often do we get caught up in feeling like the decision has to be made today, but does it actually?
Yeah. And that brings up another really great point is that you can also, the decision could be when you're going to make the decision. So if you're like,
Hmm.
all right, you know what? I'm not going to make this decision right now. I'm going to make it in August. Then say, I'm going to make it August 15th. I'm making that up and put on your calendar, make decision about,
Great.
the summit and put the link, any information that you need to like make a
Yeah.
decision, put it there and then go, okay, I now know that I don't need to keep thinking about it because I've made the decision on when I'm deciding, because that
Yep.
gives your brain the freedom to not think about it all the time.
Oh my
Sometimes
gosh,
when I'm
yes.
like, oh, I'm going to make this decision later, sometimes, at least my brain, I'll speak for myself, my brain's still thinking about it because I didn't say, don't worry about it until this date. Remember, it's on your calendar. You're good. Because I don't
Hmm.
want to forget to make the decision later. So it's still occupying energy and mind space. But if I
Yep.
say August 15th, 3 p.m., 15-minute decision on the calendar, it's decision day, like why not have a day
Yes.
where you're just making decisions that are important for
Yeah.
the quarter or making travel plans or whatever it is. And then it's bam,
Hmm.
it's on that day. It's a block of time. I'm going to worry about it then.
So good. Hiring decisions, household decisions. I think real estate decisions for the dollar versus dime conversations. Some of those, I mean, it's not always your absolute control when those decisions are made. If something's going on the market and you're moving money around, but where can we be the ones that say these are some boundaries that I'm setting, and I'm going to be more efficient. I'm going to batch my energy and effort, even if it's like laundry day
Yes.
versus I'll have stuff in the dryer, the washer, the dryer, and then it makes it up to the couch in the bedroom and then sits there unfolded, probably until it's worn.
Yeah.
Versus, could there be, or just hire someone or have the laundry delivery come and pick it up, and that would be even more beautiful. Um, I'm curious, just also, I'm watching the clock going, I want to make sure that we get into some of the nitty gritty. For those that are listening and they're leaning into the truth bombs that you've laid down, who are the clients that you work with these days and how do you support them? What does that look like?
Yeah.
In your, I'm guessing that's like, how are you spending your dime time?
Yes, my dime time.
Yeah.
Um, so we've mentioned it a little bit earlier, but Megan Huber and I are business partners. And
Mhm.
so my background and expertise is really in client acquisition, um, brand position, like marketing positioning, things like how do you bring on clients? And I always look at it through how do you also retain them through the actions you take the second they meet you, right?
Mhm.
Now, Megan on the back end is looking at, okay, once you've acquired a client, how do you ensure they have an amazing client experience? How do you make sure they get the result that you promised them? And then how do you ensure that they stay with you, right? So we're both looking at retention, but we're looking at it from two different angles.
Yeah.
And kind of that's where we together create, have a lot of knowledge for our clients is the whole customer journey and ultimately helping people, grow their business.
And is this predominantly like service-based online entrepreneurs? Are you talking B2B? Are you consumer, like actual tangible goods, store owners?
So my background has been in a lot of different industries. That being said, where Megan and I focus and what our sweet spot is for what we would consider online education and coaching businesses.
Okay.
The industry doesn't matter so much. So we have clients that are expert real estate investors and they're coaching people through doing their first deal or coaching people through getting like growing their business, right? Things along those lines. We have people that are helping with life coaching, with health coaching, with, all different areas of life, marketing. So they're typically online education or coaching businesses. Um, Primarily because for us, if you think about concentrating the time, we focus on one program. And our one program, Amplify, is really around how do you um, grow your business while reducing your time? And then how do you start thinking differently and behaving differently and leading your team if you have team differently or acquiring team if you don't have team, right? To have the business run well with little of your less of your time and ultimately at one point be able to run without you. But
Mhm.
again, we're coming through the perspective of creating a customer journey that is validated, that has been iterated upon, that works from bringing in clients and then retaining them perspective, and then has the business owner focus on the right things.
Yeah.
Typically, oops, sorry, that's my bad, I think. Typically, like our business owners that we're working with are somewhere between we probably have two kind of avatars, the low six figures, like the 100,000, 150,000, and they're looking to consistently grow and ultimately build, whether it's a $500,000 business, $1 million business, things along those lines.
Mhm.
We also have clients that are already at like 1 to 3 million looking to grow. And so we'll either work with them in the construct of our kind of mastermind with one-on-ones coaching support, or we do VIP days with people and their teams sometimes as well, and kind of
Okay.
come in and do that.
And and mainly working with the CEO, but also working with their entire team.
Yes. So we have in both programs, whether it's the like year-long mastermind hybrid or with like a strategy day, we're working with the business owner, but we also have dedicated time for team because Megan loves training client success teams and teams that are actually helping their clients get results. It
Hmm.
could be assistant coaches, it could be, somebody who's just tracking and managing results. I love training marketing people because a lot of what most business owners don't get unless they had a career in marketing is that marketing is so broad that a lot of times people are very siloed in their experience. And I've had a very unique, crazy career where I actually didn't have a siloed experience working in marketing. And so I see, and I've always been a big picture person. So
Hmm.
I'm able to understand what people's skill set and knowledge are and help them kind of see the big picture and be more strategic because most team members are tactical that people tend to hire and they want them to be strategists, but they're not strategists. So then they're frustrated,
Okay.
you know?
I'm
So
the visionary. Don't you get me?
Yeah, exactly. So I have this unique ability to understand visionaries and communicate to team and train team to think like a
Mm-hmm.
business owner,
Mm-hmm.
such that they're making intelligent business decisions if they are equipped with the decision making, or at least bringing important questions and thoughts to the business owner if they're going to be the final decision maker. But I think
Mm-hmm.
right now, a lot of business owners feel like everything's on their shoulder and on their plate because their team is constantly going to them, waiting for next steps and instructions. And so instead of feeling as though you can focus on where the business is going and building important assets or relationships or things like that, they're still bogged down in helping every member of their team do their job, which is
Mm-hmm.
not really where people should be spending their time as a business owner. And it's just helping them navigate the transition so that they're able to focus on what they really need to be focusing on. And their team feels confident and supported in doing the things that they need to do. And if I'm happy to train and develop team in that way.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine along the journey they get off the revenue roller coaster and actually create consistent revenue.
Yes, because in all honesty, it's really hard to focus on other things if you're constantly worried about the next week, month, days cash flow. And so we need to get a consistent baseline revenue that more than covers all expenses, more than pays the business owner what they need. Like, you know, that no matter what, that's what's coming in each month. And then we focus on how do we grow it so that it's going up from there. And then also how to manage the money, because the number of seven-figure business owners that I've worked with that are bringing in, like, paying themselves, or the profitability is like low six figures. I'm like, something's off. You can easily, with a coaching or online education business, be taking home, profit wise, not personally, 70% of the revenue. But you have to be thinking a certain way and streamlining certain things,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes some intentionality. Even if you get to like 60%, I think you're in a good spot, but you really can get to like 70.
Yeah. And how much of that do you think is mindset, like addressing self-sabotage, addressing our relationship with receivership, being able to address money mindset where we actually make money and keep it? Or do you
Yeah.
think your focus is a lot more on the nuts and bolts strategy?
So so I feel like those were slightly two different questions, because I think everything at some point is rooted in mindset, right? Like, your beliefs are going to dictate your actions, period, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so
Mm-hmm.
100% there's a mindset component to it, but there's also a strategic component to it, because you can
Mm-hmm.
have the right mindset but not know what strategy to use, and then you could still end up not in this, like, better off but not in the right spot. So I think it's both.
Yeah.
But I think for me, a strategy without the right mind, like, belief system, is pointless. And so I tell that to people all the time. I could give you the best, I'm at the end of the day a strategist. I can give you the best strategy on a piece of paper that I know will work. But if you are in a lacking belief system, it will not matter what strategy I give you, it's not going to work. So
Mm-hmm.
um, there's definitely a mix of work that we do from a mindset perspective and a strategy perspective.
Love it. And you do a mix of both online and in-person work too. Don't you guys also host VIP weekends and retreats?
Yeah, so with our main program, we get together twice a year. And then when we do strategy days with people, they're typically in person. We prefer in
Mm-hmm.
person. I think it's easy
Mm-hmm.
to get distracted spending a day with me online, you know?
And everybody wants to go to Florida.
I mean, right? It's nice
Mm-hmm.
and warm over here.
What about the seven-figure stall? Like, how often do it? You hear, I experience the growth, hit the seven-figure mark, and then stall. What's going on there? Why is that a trend? Do you see the trend?
I totally see the trend. And the biggest part of it is that the activities that got people to seven figures, one, typically can't get them beyond seven figures. So that's number one.
Mm-hmm.
They're just in a different phase of business. So it requires some different things. And I think the other piece is that the way in which a lot of people are getting to seven figures, they're using almost the max of all of their resources. So they literally can't give more time, energy, or money to their business. And so
Yeah.
if you're doing things, working all the time and allocating all of your energy and all the different resources, you don't have any more capacity to grow. Like you literally have
Mhm.
expended everything that you have to get to a certain point. There's also certain businesses that are only scalable to a certain point the way that you've built them. So you really have to go back and look at what is your business model? What are the tools and resources that you have, including like people resources and all of that. And so there's a certain kind of recalibration that needs to happen for a lot of folks at
Yeah.
that milestone.
I love it. And I imagine as people are listening, it's applicable if you're running a business, it's applicable if you're running a household, if you're in a relationship, if you're thinking about diversifying income streams and getting involved in real estate or passive income streams. I mean, all of this is really around life.
Yeah.
Um, I'm aware of time. Any last parting thoughts? Anything that feels unsaid? We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah. So there is a guy, his name is Dr. Larry Farewell. I've met him a couple of times, but most recently, like a couple of weeks ago, really got to hear him speak a lot longer. And he wrote the book, like The Science of Creating Miracles. And he is like a quantum physicist, like a nerd. Like, he's probably one of the smartest people walking the planet. I think his dad was a um like the one of the people who developed the atomic bomb, like sort of like he's just that's they're just smart people. Not that you want to create an atomic bomb, but like could
Yeah.
figure out what the problem was without it. Anyway, he said, which this really resonated to me with me. He said, everything that you think of is mathematically possible. Right? Like anything that you can ever come up with is mathematically possible. There's an equation that it would work. It's just a matter of probability. Like, is it highly probable to happen or not highly probable to happen? But I think in quantum physics or some, no, I'm not a quantum physicist, but like everything is mathematically possible. And that was
Mhm.
a huge game changer for me because I'm delusional. And I'm like, well, if anything is possible and it's a probability thing, I'm delusional enough to believe that me and with my God, like I can do anything. Like I'm literally like, probability, I can, that's
I'm
way
gonna
high.
fly.
Just hello. And so I'm like, I can create miracles left and right. So the one thing I would say for folks is to really just realize that anything that, like, anything idea that you've had or desire that you have is mathematically possible. Like, there's literally an equation out there in the world that it's a possibility. And so if you know that, then it's really about your belief, the actions you take, depending on what your faith is, like the level of faith you have in it's working out. Um, there's it's a
Yeah.
probability. So it's like
And
increased probability.
and how you use your time and how you compartmentalize boundary setting and limit transitions so that we can, rather than spending 9 hours working and wasting six of them, let's just hone in on the 3 hours that are actually productive anyway, no matter what it is that we're doing. So batching, it's so good, Nikki. So for those of you listening, Facebook, you can find Nash Nikki. Instagram, you can find Nikki A. Nash Official. No, Nikki Nash Official. Yeah.
Yeah.
Website, nikkinash.co. And I already mentioned podcast. She's nikkinash.co/podcast. She's got the Market Your Genius podcast. So lots of ways to follow her, reach out to her, continue to learn more. And with that, I really appreciate you. Great nuggets, important information for all of us to hear when anything is possible. And for those of us that are dreamers and wanting to create tremendous legacy, like myself and like you, important message to hear and perfect timing for me, particularly today. I'm like, right, right, I've got this. All right, Nikki, thank you so much for your time.
Oh my
Anything
God,
else?
you're so welcome. That's all I've got. That's all she wrote.
Good stuff. Look forward till next time.